Hi, my name is Eric Abramian, and I'm a member of the Beverly Hills Bar Association in our international committee. I'm also an editor at the International Committee's biannual journal, The Global Fashion Lawyer. We just launched our second issue in September during Milan Fashion Week, which was a huge success thanks to our creative and innovative contributors. In September, we also launched our social media interview series, which is really an informal way to get to know some of the lawyers and other distinguished professionals who contribute to our magazine. And today I'm here with Ramela Ohanian, who is a fellow Loyola Law School alum and a brilliant attorney in the entertainment and digital media practice group at Shepherd Mullen. Welcome, Ramela.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and sort of how you got there?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I currently work at Shepherd Mullen, which is a big law firm. I personally work in the Century City office. I've been there for a little bit over 3 years now. In general, I'm a entertainment transactional attorney, which means that I negotiate and prepare contracts in connection with for me personally, the development, production and exploitation of content for film, television, digital media, kind of all over. And for example, that could mean that I help a studio if they want to acquire the rights in a book, for example, or a book series or a screenplay. I can assist with that agreement. The engagement of writers, directors, producers, talent, cast, crew. It's kind of a very, very wide spectrum of things that an entertainment lawyer can be involved in. And I graduated from Loyola as well in 2016. I think graduation was very straightforward then as compared to what it's like now. But I love Loyola very much. And right after that, I went to, right after passing the bar, I started as my first job as a production attorney for Awesomeness TV. And I love that job. It was so great. And I moved to a firm at Shepherd Mullen specifically for the wide range of experience you get at a law firm, and specifically a law firm like Shepherd Mullen. And we do a lot, and it's definitely never boring.
That's amazing. So I know that when we last spoke, we talked a lot about merchandising. Well, we talked a lot about everything, but merchandising and how attorneys in your field facilitate the transactions that take place between studios and authors. Mm-hmm. I was thinking a lot about that conversation because, as you know, I'm a writer myself, and I feel like especially today, when authors are doing book deals with studios, it's become more of a trend to be more heavily involved in the marketing and merchandising side of things. Like promoting merchandise on their own social media accounts and just having more stake in general. How do you think studios have adapted or sort of reacted to this? Just speaking from your own experience in these kinds of transactions.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think in any rights deal, right, the whole point or the first question is like, how are we slicing up the rights? So in the example you mentioned where a studio is, acquiring the rights in a book or a book series from an author, of course the studio will want television and film rights, right? But there's a lot of other rights there that, who gets them? For example, live stage rights, radio rights, podcast rights are huge now, of course. And another big set of rights is merchandising, like you said, and, who gets those rights? If the book author is not somebody who has exploited merchandising, in connection with their books, maybe that right will automatically go to the studio, and automatically, I mean like an easy, they're happy to give that up and maybe an uptick in their purchase price. But if it's an author who has, and I've seen it where they have contributed a lot to the merchandising side of their book series or their books, they might not want to give that away. Or if they do want to give it away for a certain, percentage of profit or for, certain uptick in the price. And there's a lot, merchandising is a big area. So there's definitely a lot of discussion about that sometimes. And, as you mentioned, a lot of people will want to continue to promote the merchandising, of course. And, if a studio is involved, most of the time the studio will want, of course, control over how it is promoted. If it's their production, they should always, have the control over that. But, the author promoting it as well is, usually not controversial because it's good for all parties, right? The author's book becomes a TV show and the author helps promote that TV show, that will likely strike interest in their books themselves. So it's usually, it is a big area, and merchandising itself, and then promotion, even aside from merchandising, is huge now, especially with social media. It's not uncommon for a talent agreement or a book author agreement or any type of agreement with like an individual to have, to ask the individual to also be promoting, whether that's attending interviews pre-COVID or a press junket date, something like that. But more and more, we're seeing that there's actual, like, on top of those provisions, there's another provision specifically for social media. And now they will be asked to post maybe 3 times on Instagram, with a certain phrase, or obviously all with FTC guidelines. But yeah, it's definitely, promotion is, for their books and for the show or for the movie is definitely still around. And social media just adds like a different component to it.
For sure. And I imagine that, an author who is heavily involved in the merchandising process, if he has certain things that he wants to keep and do independently, like do the studios sort of work with that and like, take the rights of everything else and leave certain rights to the author in terms of merchandising?
Maybe, yeah. It definitely will be an area of discussion, I believe. And it may be that, okay, you get to keep merchandising. For example, if you were doing a book and like your book that will be coming out hopefully soon, but if you're doing a book, maybe you want the right to, maybe you've been making tote bags with, like, your character on it, or a backpack, or keychains, like just kind of anything, and maybe you want to continue doing that. There could be a discussion where it's like, okay, well, we'll get to merch, the bigger stuff, maybe, clothes and toys and stuff like that. Toys are obviously a huge area. But, you can continue what you're doing, or you can continue what you're doing until we exercise our rights. We pay you for the purchase of them. And now maybe you have like a sell-off period where you can do it for 3 more months and wrap up those contracts. But then after that, like, we're the only ones who exclusively can do it. It's honestly just, it depends on the parties. It depends on what the author wants in exchange for those rights. It depends on how much the studio wants those rights. Merchandising rights in general are pretty valuable. So it's just kind of the discussion on case-by-case basis of how they want to slice those rights up, if at all.
Yeah, that's a really interesting area. And I feel like it also depends on the size of the studio and the author, and sort of what their experience is and how big the project is. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe the author doesn't have maybe doesn't have the interest, but the understanding of the merchandising world to be able to do that. And maybe they want, maybe they a lot of times welcome the help from the studio to take their character, take their really famous and cute character and merchandise it, and then the author will obviously get some payment for that. Of course, that's the whole a bargain. But yeah, it could go really either way, just depending on the author's background and what they've done with their book and where they want to see it go by them or the studio.
Yeah, and I feel like even in the past decade, like we have, like, just moving to the topic of influencers and that sort of realm that you mentioned a few minutes ago, I feel like we, like, in the past would really label people and sort of lock them into their labels. Like, if you were an author, you wrote. If you were a fashion blogger, you wore cool outfits and took photos and posted them. If you were an entrepreneur, you were behind the scenes and working with startups. But I think it's amazing that today a single person can literally take on all of those roles. And I think that attorneys are finding that they have to work with the clients and not necessarily for them. It's more of like a collaborative process. Do you think that's an accurate statement? Like, can you shed some light on that?
Sure. So I think the first part of what you said, for sure, definitely. I mean, you might have seen, an influencer who is in the, in the makeup world, for example, who gives you makeup tips, now transitioning to giving you tips for skincare. And that's probably a more natural progression. But now we're seeing, like, all the time where it's an influencer who maybe started out as giving you makeup tips, but now is maybe they have their own clothing line. Or, I mean, we've seen it in the past, away from social media, actors and actresses become singers, right? Or vice versa. And people definitely, have these different roles, but especially with influencers now, it's just kind of, you see it more and more because it's so readily available to you that, yeah, they are definitely not, they're getting more creative and they're finding different ways to reach their followers. And yeah, it's super interesting. And I think the second part of what you said is about the collaboration. Yeah, I do think that's one of the things that attorneys for sure, I think, and clients as well look forward to. I mean, there's always work to do, right? There's probably, there's a lot of paperwork to do. That's where attorneys, we're very used to that. And sometimes it is just about getting the work done and getting through the paperwork, or the agreements. But I think attorneys, or at least myself personally, we love to collaborate. It's fun working with the client and brainstorming together, coming up with a solution together, as opposed to just kind of doing the paperwork nonstop. And I think clients find value in that too, because they want not only somebody to push the agreements through, but to, converse with and, find the solution together, especially if the attorney, is an outside counsel, for example, and has, is very attuned to industry custom. I think that kind of collaboration is really valuable for both parties.
Right. I feel like lawyers are sort of becoming like agents. It feels like entourage.
You've heard entourage so many times. Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that for sure.
I mean, Ari Gold in Entourage was an attorney himself, or not an attorney, but went to law school.
Yeah, I actually never saw Entourage, but Ari Gold, I've known that name for so even without seeing the show. So his name it's definitely recognizable.
Yeah. I have kind of a difficult question for you. Why do you think influencers are gaining such responsibility today? I know that sounds really philosophical, but
that's a good question. My take on it would be that it's about accessibility. I think, in the past, if you looked up to a celebrity or you inspired a celebrity, they were so unreachable, unattainable. And then Twitter, I feel like came along, kind of changed the game there, where we can actually see their thoughts in real time. Talking about more about celebrities at this point, but and then social media came about more specifically Instagram, for example, and it's you're seeing daily updates sometimes about your favorite people, your favorite celebrities, your favorite influencers, and influencers specifically, really, I think, some more than others, sure, or celebrities some more than others too, but really communicate with their followers, with their fans. And, it's not uncommon to see them interacting with them in the comments, responding to DMs. I've seen an influencer where she started a skincare product line, and she would literally, in her Instagram stories, do polls saying hey, I need, I'm coming up with my next product. What ingredient, do you want to see? What product are you missing in your routine? Yeah. And I think that a lot of that, or for example, somebody who's into the fashion world will post an outfit that maybe normally you'd see on Google Images, but now it's on Instagram right in front of you. And they tag where their pieces are from and how much they cost and what color and what store and where, and, sometimes, there's
pictures.
Exactly. Yeah. And the link to it, which obviously, sponsorship and whatnot, but I just mean, I think they're right in front of us, and they're more reachable than before. And I think there's some, there's some fascination with that in terms of their followers for sure.
Totally. And I like how they're maintaining interest, within the communities that follow them. They're very savvy business people. They know how to not lose your interest. I have a family friend who is a beauty influencer or a beauty and lifestyle influencer.
Mm-hmm.
And she's brilliant. She started a beauty line where she included her followers as part of the people who decide what the bottle of whatever product.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we didn't see that 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that's more recent for sure. Who's your favorite style icon in the influencer world?
Okay, cheesy. So I love Olivia Palermo. The cheesy part I'm saying is because I used to watch her on The City, which was a spinoff from The Hills. So that's how I knew her. She was kind of like the mean girl or something. That was her role on the show. But I love her. I think her looks are so classic. I think she can make anything look chic. So I love following her on Instagram. And then just in terms of style icons in general, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying about like not fitting in a box. Blake Lively, who's an actress in her own right for sure, has so many films. Every time this woman comes out with a film, I feel like she has like these amazing outfits on tour, more color, you know what I mean? Like more colorful than the next. So I do think she's definitely a style icon as well.
I love her.
Yes, right? Yes. I love her. She like rocks every look. And I'm gonna cheat a little bit, but I think like characters like Carrie Bradshaw, obviously Sex and the City, even like Leighton Meester playing Blair Waldorf in Gossip Girl, those are all over social media still. I mean, they're obviously characters in a shows, but they're still like they pop up on my Explore on Instagram. So I think they're still really relevant today and do show up as style icons, on my feed.
Yeah, and people from these like characters from these shows, their influence sort of resounding today because you see people dressed like them or wearing things that are inspired by those looks in the shows. And
yes, exactly. Okay, what about you? You have to tell me yours.
Well, it's funny because I love Olivia Palermo. She's amazing. Her husband has the best style, Johannes Hubel.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like he wears a lot of like Italian, like chic, like menswear, very sleek. I love that kind of like vibe. I'm leaning towards like more classic things. Like as I'm getting older, I love Riccardo Pozzoli, Remy Jackman. Yeah.
Very classic.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about the modeling industry today. We talked about how today's influencer wears sort of the hat of an entrepreneur. And we know models are doing the same thing, whether it's starting personal clothing brands or beauty companies. And this is something we're seeing a lot more of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the jobs of models and influencers are very different because while influencers are working for themselves and signing the kinds of deals they feel are best to promote their own image, I feel like models are still very much tied to the brands and they're representing the brands in a more like rehearsed way. Do you think that models are still signing a lot of deals without representation that are detrimental to their own image?
I think that's a good question. I think models are paying more attention now than maybe they were before. And I think that's largely because of how quickly information is disseminated now. Like if you didn't want a picture to get out there or information, whatever, like now, I mean, it's out there, it goes out there everywhere so quickly. I mean, there's a freaking like meme about it, there's quotes about it, like whatever, like it's so easily disseminated. And I think in the past, it wasn't uncommon for agents maybe to sign the same release for a model day in and day out. It's the same type of release. Let's just sign it. Let's keep moving. Whereas now, Emily, I don't want to mispronounce her name, Ratajkowski. I think I'm saying that right? Yeah, okay, if I'm saying that right. But she has been actually like, it's funny. She has been very vocal about that recently. She's written a few things for Vogue where she came out and she said that she had images of her that she did not want released, that she did not sign to grant permission for them to be released. And she is really speaking out about how people's likeness and their names and their publicity is taken advantage of in ways that they did not, approve of them being exploited. So I do think people are likely getting more careful now and really, understanding the language, what exactly it means, what the parameters are, which is good. We all should be doing that. And, even average people, I mean, like, I'm a lawyer and I haven't read like my cell phone contract, right? Like I don't read like the fine line or whatever. Obviously when it comes to a model and their image, it's probably more important to do so. But, nowadays I think they're really seeing the value in really taking the time and parsing out the language and the contract and making sure they are comfortable with the release. In her case, Emily's case, she said that she did not sign a release in that specific scenario, but she did mention that in the past, like her agent would, sign things for her because it was so common back then. So I do think that's changing nowadays for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like for models especially, it's a little bit more difficult just because they have that agent, and sometimes it's exclusive deals with agents, and it's the lawyer represents the agency, not the model. So it's kind of hard to get that sort of legal protection that an influencer might have, that an influencer could get independently.
That's right. I think what you touched on earlier, yeah, influencers do. I mean, we're seeing they're such a big part of the industry now, where I don't think people, I didn't predict that 15 years, 10 years ago or whatever. And it's like, they do have, I mean, they do have power, they have their brand. They're very big on authenticity, making sure that if they do need to promote something on their page, like it's the way that they've been doing it in their own style. They want to stay true to their followers. Yeah, and I think that's a big part of social media now.
For sure. I also think that diversity, like in the modeling industry, is a problem that's been around forever. Although I do think it's getting a little bit better finally this year. Beauty standards are sort of changing, and it's really interesting to observe and judge, especially in the more recent shows and campaigns after COVID, whether brands are being more inclusive. And I always ask myself, like, is this authentic? Like, is it going to last? Are they, doing it in a meaningful way that's kind of permanent?
Yeah, we are seeing more of that, which I love too. Like I know Aerie, which is a clothing company, a branch of American Eagle, they started doing campaigns with real models. And even without the real models, they kind of started taking away the filters. And you saw like stretch marks, or you saw like body hair, whatever it is, things that were, not in advertisements before, they're showing it for real now. And I love that. And I think companies are companies at the end of the day, but I do think they are starting to see that consumers want to see themselves reflected in these advertisements. And like you mentioned, a lot of campaigns have been, introducing that. Dove, I know, has done it as well. And they're, I think, starting to incorporate, more into that. And for example, makeup, for example, like Rihanna, she has her Fenty Beauty makeup line, and she came out with, I think it's now 50, but I think she came out with 40 at the time, different shades of foundation, which was like groundbreaking, because she wanted to make sure every skin type, had a foundation to match. And like, that was literally like a game changer, which is so funny because like, that shouldn't be, right? But it was. And then Selena Gomez with Rare Beauty, she came out with, I want to say, close to 50 as well. I mean, this is starting to become the norm, which is amazing. For clothing, Khloe Kardashian, she said that when she was, I think she said in an interview that like, when she was younger, her sisters are more petite than her, she would say. And so she's like, it was really easy for them to find jeans. And she's like, I was always left and I couldn't find my perfect pair of jeans. So she came out with Good American, her line of jeans, and she has so many sizes because she wants to make sure she has representation and she includes different body types. I think it's great. I do hope it's here to stay. And whatever the reason behind it, like I hope it's authentic, but whatever, and I hope it is, but whatever the reason is, I am glad that it's here, in whatever shape.
Likewise, yeah, I think it's very powerful, and I think it took like literally a global pandemic to change the modeling industry a little bit, and I think we're headed in the right direction.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Ramela. I know we said we'd take like 20 or 30 minutes max with this, so I don't want to keep you too long, but I really appreciate you being here with us, and that was a great conversation.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.